Roxy.
Good morning, Tam Tam.
How have you been?
I've been up since 5. This is a very exciting week. 5 a.m. getting it together. Can I just tell you what I did this weekend to myself, which was not good?
What did you do? Was it drink? Was it good drink related?
No, it actually wasn't this time, which is shocking.
Surprise.
Yes, shocking. I clearly was not mentally or emotionally prepared for this, but I watched My Octopus Teacher on
Oh my
Netflix.
gosh, I wanted to see that for so long, but then I keep falling asleep because in the beginning it does promote sleep with all the movement in the water. I'm like, I'm passed out.
Tammin, okay, you're gonna have to have an entire box of Kleenex when you watch it.
Yeah.
It's so good, but it's so heartbreaking, but like bittersweet. Like, so basically, I'm not prepared for these things. Like, I should not be watching anything animal related. Like, whether it's a documentary or a movie, because I always fall into like a puddle of tears. So
I don't know about you. I don't know if it's like a premenstrual thing or just like a woman thing in general. But every time I see something to do with kids or dogs, I like have a full mental breakdown. Like it's a full mental, like existential. What's the meaning of life? Why are there children who don't, aren't getting fed? Why are there dogs that are stuck in the pound? Like I can't. It's hard because when they say that silence is another form of making a decision. Mm-hmm. So it's hard because like when I watch sometimes like these dogs and they're like $2 a day could save all these.
Oh my God.
I want to switch it off because for my mental state, I want to be able to switch it off because sometimes you have to take care of yourself. And watching those types of videos, don't take care of yourself. Which is why I'm in a haunted hotel because I want to screw with my mind.
Right. When you hear, I will remember you, it's time to turn the channel.
Yeah. So it's really sad. But somebody else who is a trailblazer in the body positivity world, which is an interesting term because it's something that's been thrown around a lot lately, and I want to know more about it. And I want to know what she believes it is and what her narrative is. And she's a social media powerhouse. And a year ago, she had as far as I know, following on TikTok, she had pretty much like just probably her friends and family on social media and TikTok. And now she has 1.4 million people following her story. So I want to know more about her. I want to know why people are so excited about what she's doing, how she's changing the narrative around body and body positivity. And her name is Alicia McCarvell. Please make sure that I say that right. So welcome to Women on Top.
Yay!
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank you so much
Alicia. Have you seen My Octopus Teacher on Netflix?
Most important question. Have you seen My Octopus Teacher?
I have not seen that, but you sold it for me.
I mean, okay, just bring your Kleenex.
Well, Alicia, you're one of the most inspiring people on social media. I've been following you for a while. And as someone, I've never really loved the body that I've been in. I've had issues with weight, when I grew up as a teenager. And watching you loving and respecting your body is refreshing. And it is against the norm right now. And we are taught as women that we must look a certain way and we must. And when we don't, specifically what the world thinks that we're supposed to look like, we should look like, then we feel like we're not worthy. And we feel like, we fall into a spiral of self-loathing and shame. And it's something that I've done my whole life, even, as I get older and even with kids and postpartum and what your body looks like postpartum. So walk us down your path to self-love and acceptance, because it's hard for women out there to feel that way.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head there. And I think that for so long, I thought I was alone in the way that I was feeling about my body. And I realized that I am the majority and the majority of women are feeling what I'm feeling. I have typically never been a smaller woman. Like even in high school, I played sports, which I attribute to helping me keep my weight down when I was younger. And then I got into university and, people joke about the freshman 15 and it was very much a freshman 50 for me. Like my whole lifestyle changed. I jumped into school and I wasn't doing anything for myself anymore. And, the resources to stay active changed and trying new things as an adult is hard. And I spiraled into a place of deep hate for my body because my body had changed so drastically. And then I decided to start working at a gym, and I started changing the way that I was eating, and I went the complete opposite way with it. So I was eating the same thing every day. I was exercising up to 4 hours a day, doing, strength training and cardio. I was taking weight loss drugs that were not suitable for humans to be taking. So there's a lot of that in the bodybuilding industry in general. I had no fats in my diet, like anything you could possibly think of to the extreme I was doing. And then I would binge eat on the weekends. So I could eat whatever I wanted on Saturdays for a 6-hour period of time. And that's where I really attribute my experience with binge eating too, is that experience there. So I worked my butt off. I lost over 100 pounds. I stepped on a stage in a bikini at 127 pounds. And I walked off stage and felt really no different about myself than I had before I had lost all the weight. And that was a big moment for me because that's a lot of investment of time and emotion and effort to only come out on the other side.
Feel the same.
And still not be happy with where you were. And that really put into perspective that nothing had really changed. I wasn't treating myself any differently. Sure, people were looking at me differently, and the way other people treated me was different. I got a lot more attention, but I still wasn't proud of who I was. And then I had no reverse dieting. That's a thing when you're in bodybuilding, and I slowly started to gain back the majority of my weight. And I spent about 3 years after that, really struggling to kind of figure out, like, how did I want to exercise? How did I want to treat my body? Binge eating when I was stressed out, putting myself in, really crappy diets and really crappy, things that were never going to last in my lifestyle. And then 2 years ago, things started to change for me. I had a moment in a beach in Florida where I ended up in the water with my husband. We've been together for a very long time. And I decided to wear a bathing suit to the beach, and we spent 2 hours in the water doing absolutely nothing, but just enjoying each other's company. And I got back to where we were staying afterwards, and I cried in the shower for probably 15 minutes, just being so like, you've been with your husband now for, you've been together for 12 years, and you didn't allow yourself that experience for 12 years because you didn't want to put yourself in a bathing suit because you're so ashamed of your body. You've allowed you and your husband to miss out on experiences like this because of that. And that was my turning point. But instead of the shame that I was feeling being about my body, my shame was coming from how my body was affecting my life, which was very different for me. And it's not a type of shame that I had felt before. And I just decided to say, screw it. And I started, buying clothing that brought me joy. And I started focusing on everything but my size. So that turning point led me to a journal that I would fill out every single day, which had a list of, things in it that I appreciated about myself that weren't associated with my size. And it really put into perspective how much I had allowed one thing about myself to dictate how I had treated this entire package of who I was, from being behind a camera to stepping finally in front of it, to allowing myself to do things that I typically normally wouldn't because I was, ashamed of my body. And then it has just spiraled from there. I've now, developed my binge eating has stopped completely. I've developed what I would call a wonderful relationship with exercise versus what I have ever had in my past over the last 2 years. And it has really put into perspective the value that I have placed on the opinions of others and my size.
You know, it's so interesting. I mean, I follow you on social media. I love, seeing what you're up to and seeing the latest on you. And I noticed in one of your social media posts, you said that you used to let weight dictate how you felt about your whole self. Why was this happening? Was it something that happened like early in life, or did it just become all too consuming? What was like the trajectory of that?
Well, my weight really dictated everything. Like it dictated the clothes that I wore, like I choose to wear on a daily basis. It would dictate the opportunities I put myself out there for, jobs that I would interview for. It dictated my relationship with the gym has been exercise to lose weight. My size dictated that. There was no other option. You couldn't exercise for anything else. And mind you, all while I was, feeling this way, I was working in a gym, helping women see the potential of everything that exercise can do for them. Yet my weight and my size dictated my relationship with that. It dictated how I allowed my husband to love me in certain situations. Saying, if I don't feel good about myself, I don't understand how you could possibly feel good about me. And it was very much all consuming, from the point of, me losing weight to gaining it back, to that moment, literally that moment on the beach, which sounds so small, but it was a big moment for me to be like, wow, 12 years, you've never stepped foot on a beach. Like, that's a long time to not do something strictly because of the size of your body. And it's not even a difficult thing for somebody who is plus size to do. Like, it's not like, like I was holding myself back from, doing these like crazy tree climbs that are around, or something that it was literally standing in the water with my husband. And I had allowed myself to not do that. So it was definitely all consuming. It consumed every decision I made.
How many times do women feel this way, and they have missed out on so much of life, being a mom and having 2 10-pound babies and having skin on my stomach that I don't recognize, has stopped me from, like you said, going to swim with my kids or wearing the swimsuit that I want to, for fear of ridicule, and feel it's that word shame, to be vulnerable, to be able to step out on the beach and to feel vulnerable, and then to have looks of people. And, especially since, being in the public eye, being on a TV show, it almost like even magnifies that, because it's like you're meant to fit into this box of perfectionists, like people who are in front of the camera. Well, they mustn't have any issues with their bodies or aging or anything like that. Whereas we're all sort of dealing with our own demons in the way that we think about our bodies. When you said your story, I remember, so I was about 200 pounds when I was a teenager. And then I lost the weight through unhealthy binging and bulimia and anorexia and all that. And I remember standing in front of the mirror every day and looking at my body. And if my bones didn't pop out the way that they should have from starvation, then I didn't leave the house. And think about how many years of like growing, that the age where you're supposed to have fun when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I just stayed indoors, and I was like a shell of myself, because, the world had taught me and so many of us that if you don't look a certain way, then you're not enough. And so that goes to my next question. Like, I was really bullied when I grew up, when I was 14, 15, 16. It was like my years of being really bullied. And those scars I still carry. And it's people say, through therapy and one day changing your mindset, then those scars aren't there. I feel like they're still there. They're just maybe less obvious. But do you still carry any scars from any of the hate that you've ever received over the course of your life? Or have you been able to put that in a box and said, that's that, and I'm moving on?
Well, I think the beauty of scars is that, obviously metaphorically, but scars are just, it's a symbol of the fact that you've been through it. It's been there, but it's healed, but it never really goes away. It is always there. And I don't think that that is necessarily a negative thing. I think that that's an important thing to remember, that those are the things that build you to who you are and allow you to have the view that you have now, or be the parent that you are, or the, partner that you are, the friend that you are. For me, I was bullied, but for the majority of my life, that had nothing to do with my weight. Like when I was a kid, I definitely had experiences with bullies, but at that time I was just, an obnoxious, 7-year-old, 8-year-old. And that's where, I had been bullied. Now, right now it's a little bit different. The type of hate and bullying that I get and see, obviously being on a platform, full of, the world, essentially seeing me, it's just a heightened exposure. People who would normally see me now see me, and being confident in the skin that I'm in. I get a lot of hate. But for me, it's less about kind of packing it up and saying I've been through it, and more about educating, because I think it has a lot to do with people's own insecurities and the things that they've been through, that where it comes from towards me. Of course. And I think that's part of why I love having a platform in the first place, is if me existing challenges how you think, then I think that that's an important, if I don't have to do anything and I just have to exist happy in my body, and that makes you feel uncomfortable, I think that's on you. And that's something that you have to work on. So if I can use my platform to kind of help with that, then that's important. But 5 years ago, I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you that I feel the same way, because I was in a very much of I was bullying myself at the time. Not only would I have had other people bullying me, but I would have also been sitting behind the camera bullying myself. So I think that that's been a lot of the growth, is just understanding that stuff is going to come, seeing it for what it's worth, but then for me to take it a step further and educate people and challenge the way they view me and other plus size women.
I think growing up, I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking about when, at what point did I start thinking negatively about my body? And I remember actually a thought came to mind. It was 6th grade dance recital. I remember trying on the costume, and it was like a 2-piece costume, stomach showing. And I remember looking at myself and just seeing my stomach stick out, oh God, I feel that, I think that was kind of the first time it sort of hit me that why is my body, and that's the time when your body's changing anyway, right? It's like puberty and that time. And I just remember feeling quote unquote fat, whatever that negative sort of connotation can be around that. And I remember starting at that point and then going on and on, never really loving my body, no matter how thin I got, no matter how much weight I gained, kind of a yo-yo back and forth. It never really felt like I was 100% happy with the body that I was in. So for you, I wanted to know, at what point growing up, or whatever point it was, that you started feeling negatively about your body? Do you remember, is there a certain memory tied with it? Is there something, that you can pinpoint about that?
High school. Okay. Probably, I went through junior high. For me, I guess if we're going off sizes, I did Taekwondo for up until I was probably 15 years old, 16 years old. So I was relatively active. I was very lucky that my size, I know sports can be a trigger for a lot of people, but I was very lucky that Taekwondo, I felt no pressure being competitive there for my body itself. But it was when I had when I started to have less control over my body, I feel like that's where things changed for me. And high school was definitely the hardest. You're now in these bigger groups of women, and I quickly became the bigger friend. And I had never been the bigger friend. I had always just, I'd never seen myself that way. So when we were trying on things or going places or going downtown, I was never really somebody who could share clothing or, you know, my closet was never a closet that people could get into. And same thing with my relationship with my sister. You know, my sister's younger than me, and we shared clothes to a point. And then once I hit high school, that started to go away. And I think that my value was so attached to the people around me and being seen, you know, seeing myself as equal, that once I started to become not what I had viewed like not what I view them as, that was when my relationship with my body really started to kind of dwindle per se.
Okay.
So we hear the word body positive so much. Firstly, do you feel like it's a negative connotation or a positive connotation? Because I know that people can be down the line for both. And for me, looking on an outsider, I think it's wonderful. You know, I have 2 young girls, and to show all different types of bodies is amazing. And I'm so happy that she lives in a world now where this is becoming more of the norm. But I know some people can play it up a little more and kind of feed into this whole narrative of like, you know, maybe for attention, which again is not what I think you're doing at all. I think you're actually educating people, and it made me rethink so many different thoughts, and I love the content that you're putting out. But what is the body positive movement like in your own words?
So the body positive movement for me personally is fighting to ensure respect for all body types. And that doesn't just fall for plus size women. That falls for anybody, people in disabled bodies, people, you know, who it goes for anybody who would be considered marginalized in a sense that it is held back from things. It is not given the same opportunities. It is viewed by society to be negative. That's what body positivity is to me. It is removing the negative narrative that comes along with anything that's different to do with your body. And that's why I think that it's important. I agree with you. The narrative is being very diluted right now. That's I think happens with a lot of different things. But body positivity itself, it has a long roots that go way beyond what's happening nowadays. And I think that the line between body positivity and self-love is often very, very, people teeter that line. And I would consider myself body positive because I live in a plus size body, but I would also consider my narrative also very self-love, because I don't want to just appeal to people in marginalized bodies. I want to appeal to every woman that has ever felt any different about her body, or any men, because I just started getting a big slew of men, which has been amazing for me, because that's a whole other topic. But my goal when I talk about body positivity is to show plus size women and women living in disabled bodies that they're capable of the same things as other, you know, I say women because it's dominant, but it goes for everybody, as other people. And my voice is, you know, I am a white woman. So I live with other privileges on top of that. So there are far more other bodies that are more marginalized than mine. You can get the other sides of, you know, body positivity where they tell me that I can't even talk about it because, you know, I'm white. And basically the roots of body positivity are coming from plus size Black women. That's where it essentially was created and started. So my goal again is to just be a voice that can amplify other voices and my own, so that plus size women stop holding themselves back and people will start thinking differently. And when it comes to that self-love side of things, which is I think where a lot of times people get the message kind of construed a little bit, it's about loving the body that you're in, no matter what, you know, no matter what part of your journey that you are. So I think that that's where it gets muddled, because you do have people who are using, you know, being in a plus size body to get them attention, or to, you know, to to build a narrative of complacency around being, overweight. And then you have people who are plus size who are trying to build the narrative of respect for people who are overweight. And I think those are two very different things as well. Go ahead.
Don't you think that starts with seeing more of that? Don't you think, Roxy? Like,
100%.
Also, it's just like you say that, and I'm like, yes, this is what I want. But then I think of my two daughters, and I'm like, then they need to be seeing this on TV and in films and on billboards and commercials, and they need it. We need this to be around all the time, so we know, like, so that all of this is just normal. It's just normal. We're just people. We're just humans existing in our own bodies. And there is no right or wrong, good or bad, overweight, not overweight. It just is. And that's what I say to my daughter. I'm like, whatever your size is, just is. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. It's like a banal thing, not good or bad. We don't have to attach any emotion to it, you know? So, yeah.
I think, and I think what you're doing, Alicia, is so important because, like Taman's saying, we don't see that a lot. And it's only been really in the last, 5 to 10 years that it's really come more into the forefront. And I thought it was really interesting. You were telling us about being on the beach and kind of pivoting the way you thought and really changing your life. But what I really wanted to know is, did you have any helpers along the way, like anybody to guide you or like any mentors? And if so, was it hard to ask for help?
Honestly, I felt so alone while I was going through that I didn't really have anybody. I opened my Instagram and it was filled with thin women on some type of fitness journey. And that is kind of what I had always looked for support. I had never really found anybody who was just content with the body that they were in, living their life and, still having healthy habits and still, I had never looked for that. So I think originally when I had hit the button of kind of switching it, I was very much alone. So I didn't really reach out. I didn't really think anybody would understand, honestly. And I've always been a fan of plus size women in general. And I think that just comes from me being plus size, but Melissa McCarthy, Ashley Graham, just women who don't fit this stereotypical thin persona that I feel society leans towards. And I kind of looked to get rid of anybody who made me feel inadequate on my Instagram. And I started to add people who made me feel good about who I was. And that was a big change. So it wasn't necessarily asking for help, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with Megan Boggs, but she's incredible. It's Megan Boggs. And there are so many creators out there and people in the light that live in plus size bodies that, have made me feel more confident. But it was less about a support. Obviously my husband, but he has no choice. So they have to. No,
you know where he lives.
So he has no choice. But I think that was a big step for me was, where in my life do I feel inadequate and how can I change that? And social media being what social media is, that was a big step for me to kind of be like, okay, I need to delete some of it. I found a photo of my old goal. I have a pin board that has all of my old goals on it, like my fitness goals and from back when I was, working out to just strictly lose weight. And I had found a photo of it and like the quotes that are on it, it's like, don't stop till you throw up and push through until you're like, just like these such, my whole mindset is completely different now. So I couldn't even fathom the things that were on this sheet, and they're meant to be motivational, but they were now looking at them, I'm like, how toxic they were. Like, don't stop until you're throwing up, or push yourself to your limits. Or if you don't achieve your goals today, work harder tomorrow. Just so many things that are viewed as positive, but at that time of my life were, were more contributing to the negative side effects of my body than they actually were to the positive side. So changing what I was surrounding myself was probably the biggest help for me on kind of jump-starting everything.
You talk about your hubby who you've been with for 12 years. I think we're the same in the same boat, Roxy.
Yes.
But without kids, you're probably much more romantic. Yeah, a lot more fun. But you know, I even know, like with my body, that can hurt sometimes sexually when you're with your partner because you know, if you don't feel fully connected to yourself, then how can you really be present with your husband through sex? And how has that been over the years? Have you felt like, because you've now really started to accept and love your body for what it is, that you're able to just be more sexually open with your husband? And it's not something that's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but fearful or scary or turn the lights off. It's something that is now, it's now you're accepting of. And has he noticed a difference too about how you feel?
I see. And we, again, being together for so long, we've had so many, we'll get the question.
We've had so much sex.
Yes, exactly.
There's no new positions. I get it.
We'll get so many questions about our sex life because people are like, you know, and it's never questions like this. It's always, how often are you having sex?
Right.
Or things like this, where I think this conversation, this is why I appreciate this question, is the most important, because a lot of people view me as a plus size woman and having a physically fit. We're on drastic ends of the spectrum. So I understand people, you know, viewing it as that, and they naturally assume that I would be the most closed when it comes to sex, or the least confident because of my body. And it's quite opposite in our relationship. Mind you, I was this man's first kiss. So, but I think the coolest part for me is that I've been 127 pounds and I've been, you know, upwards of 270 pounds, and how my husband felt about me never changed. How, when him reaching for me or him wanting to be with me or him initiating sex or sex in general, none of that changed because of my body from him. That all changed because of me. So yes, like even when my sex life now, at the point where I'm in my you know, I'm sitting at 225 pounds or 200. I don't weigh myself often, but where I'm sitting now versus how I felt and how I thought I should have felt at 127 pounds is I'm much more one with myself and more confident in who I am in the bedroom and in my life now than I ever was back then. And I think that comes with being, you know, loving the skin. I say that it's a broad term, but I am proud of the things that I do on a regular basis. I'm proud of my body and what it has done and what it can do. And knowing that has never changed for him is, you know, obviously something that has made me feel, it took me a long time to see that. For a long time, I thought he didn't want me, and it was so easy for me to be like, this is you. Yeah. But then looking back on it, it was never him. It was, I love my husband, but he is wholeheartedly a man, and that has never changed. And he, you know, he's always lusted for me and he's always wanted to be there. But at some point, because I felt so shameful about myself, I stopped allowing that to happen. And then once I started to kind of gain that confidence back, I started to realize that, you know, I was the bad guy back then. You know, I was the one that was making him feel like I didn't want him almost. It was, you know, how the tables, you know, quickly have turned. And I spent a lot of time apologizing to him for that. Because, you know, your sex life is meant to be dynamic. It's not meant to be a study.
Well, no, that's the shoulds that we get told is meant to be.
Right.
Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is. It's just, it's a cycle.
that's what I mean. Like in a sense that it's the same as your relationship with your body. Like it changes over a time. How often, I hate that question. How often are you having sex?
How often are you?
I mean,
do you think, well, it's
Roxy and I know. Roxy and I know. Roxy, how many times are you having sex? Come on, tell me.
I mean, I am one for me, it's not so much the frequency, it's like the intensity of it and like the quality of it.
Because you orgasm 20 times in one sitting. So it's literally lasted her the entire month. She's like, why do I need to have sex again? I orgasmed 20 times on Monday. I'm good. I'm good for 30 days.
I'm good with a big bang, you know? I mean.
And that's what I think is so important. And obviously open dialogue around this, because I think when people answer those questions and they're like 4 times a week, every single day, only once a week, it sets this standard for every single relationship that just doesn't exist.
And shame starts to seep in.
Yeah. And your sex life is your sex life. Like that is yours. That is between you and your partner. That is sometimes between you and just yourself. So like those whole things it's so important that you set those. The thing that I like to bring focus on when I get that question is it's not how frequent you are or you aren't, it's why you are and why you aren't to me. And that's like actually dwelling on it. Because if I go back to when I was 127 pounds, I was trying to have lots of sex because I thought that now that I was thin, that is what
so true.
That is what he wanted. And then I go back to, not feeling one with myself and saying no to sex. And then I was saying no to sex, not because I didn't want it, but because I felt ashamed of my body. So I try to redirect when I get asked those questions to like, it's not an amount or time, it's between you and your partner. And it's the reasons why and the reasons why you aren't is what's important with your sex life.
True.
It's, the motive behind it, I think is what's great. But I'm far more, I choose sexier things to be in now than I ever chose. And just, I never owned lingerie until 2 years ago. Those were things I just never had because I never thought that was something he would be interested in seeing me in. And then now I'm just like, I look hot, so I'm going to buy it. So that's for me. That's for me now. So, I definitely think it's changed with once I realized, who I was and how confident in myself I could be, then that kind of changed in the bedroom too, because I was less worried about what he was thinking about it, more like, this is what I can do.
It's so interesting too, because so much of sex, I think so many people place so much importance on the physical aspect of it, where it's so much more mental and emotional. I think especially for women, because it's about that connection. So at the times when you weren't feeling great about yourself, when you were kind of going through those valleys, what did he do, or what did he say, or how was he there as such a good support? Like what were some of the things that he was doing?
I think the beautiful part about my husband specifically, and for me, a lot of my learning has always happened on my own. And I think that that's hard to have when you've been with somebody for so long. And he has always been super respectful of my moments where I need to just exist in myself. Like I need to let me wallow in my self-pity for, 25 minutes, and then we can figure it out from there. So he is really great at seeing what I'm going through and choosing whether or not this is a time that I need to be alone for this, or if he needs to be like, okay, you're being silly now. Like this is, you're being so often. If I was having a hard day or I was choosing to move away from him for myself, he would really bring me back to reality in a sense of like, okay, like, why are you feeling this way? This has nothing to do with me. Like kind of putting me in my place and just allowing me to dwell on that myself, and then coming back and seeing, never really holding it against me. And I think that that's super important with anybody who's navigating their body, is that, you're learning, and it's quickly easy to take those types of things when you're having bad days out on your partners and your friends and stuff like that. So he has been so graceful in being able to kind of step back, let me dwell on it, not hold, how I feel against me, but then step in to kind of put me in my place when I'm just being necessarily over the top with how I'm feeling. So,
see, I was very, being overweight, and then I lost weight. I became very sexual because I thought, because I got attention, right? Because you get more attention when you lose weight. And I use that as like a superpower, right? I'd be like, oh, they want to have sex with me. Then I'm enough. Then I mean something. And I'm wonderful. And then you're in a marriage for, I've been with my husband 15 years. And if they're tired and they don't want to have sex with you, I used to flip out. And he would be like, well, what's the problem? Like, and I'd be like, no, you have to. I'd almost get so overwhelmed and panicked by the fact that he wouldn't want to have sex with me. And then after years of therapy, I realized that I had equated sex to self-worth. And if he didn't want to have sex with me, then he didn't love me. And if he didn't love me, then I wasn't worthy. So it's interesting when it comes to sex, and when we talk about like how much we want it, it really does, it puts this meaning on why we want it so much. Is it because we're so horny and we want to have sex all the time and we're like waking up thinking about it? Or is it because it gives us our self-worth? And that's a conversation that I think is important to have, especially with women.
Yeah. And that's why I always draw it back to, it's not about when and how often and who you're having it with. It's why you are and why you aren't in those moments. And I'd like that, just really finding out believe me, there are plenty of people who are, choosing to have sex for reasons that, are attached to their self-worth. And I don't think that that's a right or a wrong thing. I just think it's important to know that that's what is happening.
To be aware.
Right.
And for me, it was the opposite. I was choosing not to have sex because I felt, shameful about who I was. And that wasn't a right or a wrong thing while I was going through it, but it was why I was choosing to do it and how that was affecting my relationship was important.
Can you say about again for me?
About.
We did, and so,
Can you say about
sorry?
and out just one more time?
Out, sorry.
makes everything feel warm and fuzzy.
I know.
In a boat, in a boat.
A
So
boat? A boat?
Out about, and isn't it sorry a? Sorry a?
Sorry, A. Yeah. Everybody always asks me to say that. I'm out in a boat.
On a boat. And I'm sorry, eh?
Yeah. Out in a boat, on a boat.
I love that. There's oftentimes we talk about, and Tam and I have talked about this on the podcast before, are these sort of like love languages, right? With your partner. Like, what are the things that they either do or say that that give you that sort of like warm, fuzzy, very connected feeling to them? And this kind of goes on what you were saying, Tam, and about the, like, you feel very close when you guys are intimate, like sexually.
Definitely physical touch. And my
Physical
husband does
touch.
a lot
Yeah.
of things for me. Like a lot of, what is that love language? It's
it's a to-do, right?
Acts of service.
Acts of service.
He does so many acts of service. And because I grew up in the business and, people used to do acts of service for me all the time and didn't love me, it does not resonate with me. So like I need touch and words of affirmation. It's kind of both. So I'm like taking up two of them. And when he doesn't, I feel really insecure.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's definitely acts of service. Cause I love the intimacy. I love the physical connection, but it's like, I need to see him doing those things for me to, feel that intimacy. How about for you? Do you kind of subscribe to that? How do you feel about that?
I am very much, words of affirmation and physical touch. And my husband is also acts of, like his is acts of service.
Okay.
So that was a very big, moment for both of us to kind of realize how drastically different we are with the way we show love. And we've always prided ourselves on our ability to kind of like communicate and come to a common ground when it comes to things. I do realize like my husband is not an overly touchy-feely person, but when he chooses touch I know how meaningful that is. And we've spent some time really flipping it and putting ourselves in each other's shoes and realizing how often, because I think for me, it was so easy for me to be like, you don't touch me. You don't give me those words of affirmation. But when I finally sat down and thought about how many acts of service he does on a regular basis, I was like, oh shoot, okay. I don't value these things necessarily because I don't view them as, love, but look, we've been together it'll be 14 years on December 18th, and I've never put the garbage out. We've lived together for 12 years. Yeah. I've never
I think I've done the dishes twice.
Same. And I think, it's so funny because for me, I don't view that, and I never did view that as love. But then once it kind of put into perspective that those things he was doing was how he was showing it, and kind of allowed us to be a little bit more accepting of the way we showed love to one another, and still kind of challenging each other. Because, I do realize he's not going to write me love poems, but he can get me a card for my anniversary and write me a note in it. Like that has been very much like, okay, let's negotiate these things. Cause like, I still need my side of things. I'll learn to recognize how you're showing it more. And I have to try to do more acts of service around the house.
No, I haven't done the laundry. I mean, Roxy's going to think I'm crazy. I don't think I've done the laundry.
Oh, I don't do the laundry. I don't do the laundry.
Yeah, my husband does the laundry, the washing up, the dishes. He does all that stuff.
It's been really challenging for me to be like, okay, like I need to clean the house today because that's going to make him feel appreciated when he gets home. Which is so funny because I'm like, can't I just like hug you and kiss you? Like,
It's a lot less time and effort.
But it is a beautiful thing when you kind of come around the other side and do something like maybe out of your comfort zone, or, like something that they would want, which is really, it's kind of simple, but it's hard at the same time too,
What if you don't know what their love language is? And what if they don't know? Like, what if, it's easy to say, okay, well, his is acts of service, so he must want acts of service. Right. But what if you don't know?
I see. That's funny because we never really knew that those were our love languages until we actually sat down and took the love language test. Until we actually sat down and had done it. But communication in general has been one of our strongest suits, and our ability to kind of sit down and analyze the situation and have those conversations. I also have no issue asking for what I need, and neither does he. And I think that that's super important in any relationship. It's like, I need a card on my anniversary. That seems silly to you, but I need that. I know. So early on, we got pretty good at saying like, I need you to be present for this today. I need you to help me out with this today. So I think it's a lot about communication and being able to kind of ask for what you need that makes you feel good.
Did you have to at any times do therapy or anything like that to kind of get to the place where you are now? Or was this all just like, looking inwards and kind of going on your own journey?
I have honestly never done any type of therapy, not because I'm necessarily against it, but I also have never really had medical coverage, and I've never really had that, the finances to be able to support my mental health in that way. But a lot of it was internal, but I also did a lot of, I'm a huge Google searcher. So just like reading, not necessarily books, but just, like articles on self-love and, research papers on how drastically things change for people when they're feeling positive versus how they're feeling when they're negative. And that kind of put a lot of stuff into perspective for me. So a lot of it was self, just kind of like, I lost my job. So I had plenty of time to kind of just sit back and be like, okay, you need to figure out yourself type of thing. So I was very lucky in that sense, but yeah, mostly on my own.
And it's who you surround yourself and like when you said about Instagram, I did a mass cull of people I follow because I there's this, I think we're all in a way addicted to our phones and scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
And I would find myself at the end of my day and I'd have a wonderful day with my family or work or whatever I was doing. And I'd
or your podcast.
My podcast with the Roxy. And then I would sit in the bed and just scroll. And for 2 hours I was scrolling and I was feeling worse and worse and worse and comparing. And why do they have that job? And why do they have that body? And why do they have that, that wonderful trip that they're doing? And why do they have those finances? And it just started to get, by the time I would go to sleep, I'd be quite depressed. And then I'd wake up really anxious. So I did a mass culling of people who are on my Instagram that are people that are aligned with the same values as me and also the same narrative I want to put out. And you can grow learning, it makes me sad that we all can't. It's important that I think that we all can get to therapy, but if we can't, it's also who you're surrounding yourself with. I also wanted to mention when you said that you tell your husband to write you a card. I do that, but then when he writes the card, I'm like, you just wrote the card because I told you to write the card. It's not because you really love me. Or if I say hey, before I go into a meeting, you have to say I love you so much, you're going to kick ass. And then he does it and I'm like, you just did that because I told you to do that. And it's a therapist once told me, does it matter, Tammin? And I'm like, I guess it doesn't. If you want to know that it's coming from the heart, you know what I mean? And not that they're doing it because they've been told to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We literally for our anniversary, our wedding anniversary that just passed, he got me nothing, no card, no flowers, no nothing. He's not a social media guy. So I didn't even get a cute happy anniversary, babe. And we went out for dinner, which I had booked and I had planned. And we got back to the house after, and I started the conversation with, I am very grateful for the dinner and the night that we just had. But
the big old but that they're waiting for.
At least you started with the I.
At least you started with the grateful part. Rox and I would have been like, you motherfucker, how dare you? I hate that you did this. Yeah, it never starts with, I'm so grateful for everything you've done.
And I knew he would come back and be like, aren't you happy with the dinner? And I'm just I need those things. I need you. And I mean, we're 14 years and I still have to explain that to them. And I think that that's also important too. With anything, our relationships with our bodies, our relationships with our partners, they change, they adapt. You still have to have those communicate. It's not a place that you get to that's just eternal bliss and everything is perfect forever. You're growing and your minds are changing, and same thing with your body. But yeah, I had to say to him, from now on, I need a card for our anniversary. I need you. And he was like, okay. So then my birthday, he handed me a card and I was like, you only gave me this.
I told you.
But so I think someone would relate to that. So I think that that's so important too, to realize that a lot of people, even on our relationship, on the things that I show, people are like, your relationship is perfect. And I'm like, no, my relationship is mine. And I think that that's where people need to start to realize that there's no perfect in a relationship, but I still have days where I want to lock him outside and not let him in. And I'm not an easy person to deal with either. I realize that my side of our bedroom is an absolute disaster, and that gives him so much anxiety when he enters. I am not perfect.
I'm messy.
But it's that learning and adapting and growing, asking for what you need, and just being understanding of your partner. And that's that I had kind of shifted my focus to that with my body and being okay, we're learning, we're adapting, we're growing. I'm going to ask for you what I need from you, but I'm also going to respect you by doing things that are, going to build, a longer, happier lifestyle for both me and my body. So when I realized it wasn't a place I was going to get to where everything was just going to switch off and I was miraculously just going to be happy, it made it a little bit easier for me to kind of be less hard on myself and realize that each day is going to be different and each challenge is going to be different. And as long as I see that for what it's worth, then in the long run, I'm going to be a happier, healthier version of myself.
So because so many of us are at home right now due to COVID and the pandemic and all that stuff, I know for me, we talk about this, is that, you know, being an extrovert like I am, it's been really hard on me to be kind of confined inside and not being around people and the energy, because I love to feed off of that stuff. Tammin like loves being inside.
Extrovert, introvert right now.
Yeah, she
Extrovert,
is.
introvert. I like to go out, but I don't like to get out.
Again, I have to like pull her sometimes. I'm like, come on, we're going to this event.
Is fun.
But so, you know, for me, it's been really challenging. So I wanted to know for you, like, has this worn on your mental health? Has it worn on your relationship with your husband? Like, what, and if so, like, what are your tools? Like, how are you dealing with this, you know, staying at home?
I'm going to go a little opposite with this, because for me, I turned to TikTok. That's how this all began. Right. I am an extrovert. I like being in front of people. I like having, you know, an audience. I like telling stories. So when that stopped and I wasn't able to really get that anymore, that's kind of when I turned to TikTok and started posting videos. And here we are now. It just kind of expanded. And I consider myself very lucky, because at the time, nobody my age was really on the app. And then when everybody got forced to stay home and find other ways to spend their time, TikTok became a part of a lot of people's lives that it hadn't. So that's where I went to kind of showcase being an extrovert. As for our relationship, we have spent so much time apart. Like my old jobs would have me working from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. and he'd pick me up at 8:30 and we'd go home. We'd spend an hour and a half together and we'd be in bed, and that would kind of be it. So this was new for us because we've never spent this much time together. When I started staying home and he wasn't working in the evenings, we had so much time to do things, which was a blessing for us. It's been the hardest for me when it comes to my family, though, because there was about a solid month where I couldn't hug my mother. And that I live 2.5 minutes away from her. So like my family, I'm 2.5 minutes from my mother, and I'm 2.5 minutes away from my sister. And that I was so used to spending my time with them and being with them that was very, very hard on me. In terms of, you know, I was navigating this whole new world of social media, but I didn't have anybody to necessarily share any successes with either. So it has been a learning process, and just learning how to be alone, I guess. Like that whole, like being alone with myself and my thought, being alone with myself and my thoughts has been definitely a big, but journaling has been my best friend. When I put things on paper, for some reason, I can see them in a whole new light. And that has been very helpful for me to kind of write down if I'm having a bad day, take a step back and come back to be like, what were you even worried about? So, you know, that's been super helpful for me.
I think TikTok, like, has been such a connector. It's weird because I do believe that social media is wonderful and has helped me in so many ways in my life, but also can be very negative. But for some reason, the side of TikTok that they show me on their For You page has always been really positive and uplifting and entertaining. And it's actually, I think, when people are really suffering from depression and anxiety around this time and feeling loneliness, there's something about TikTok that really makes you feel like you're part of a collective. And, you know, even with this election that was going on, it was nice to feel like you weren't sitting and having thoughts alone, because other people were obviously having those same thoughts as you. And yeah, I think I agree. I think TikTok and being able to create has been such a blessing, you know, and I'm so glad that it hasn't stopped for us Americans. I'm happy that it's still there. But thank you. So, I mean, Roxy, do you want to do a Never Have I Ever?
Yes.
I would love to. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we could talk to you for another 2 hours.
Let's do it.
We're so grateful that you came on and spoke to us.
Yes.
Now that you're super famous.
I know. We scored Alicia.
That's a quick fame, right?
Yeah. That really is.
Yeah. It's been absolutely overwhelming, but also like incredibly exciting. And I think that it couldn't have happened at a better time in like my life personally, because I feel like I'm confident with who I am and what I'm going to be putting out there for people. So, but yeah, it's definitely a whole new world navigating, you know, having so many eyes on you at all times. at all times. So, yeah.
So for Never Have I Ever, to our YouTube audience, we want to make sure you guys hear her game. So go to iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts, because that's where her Never Have I Ever will be. And don't miss it. It's going to be good.
Well, I think on that note, we should let this poor Alicia go.
I know. She's like, and
Thank you so
see.
much.
It's like, this is not the podcast that I signed up for.
TMI.
Your husband's like, what did you talk about? Well, we talked
Having
about
sex at SeaWorld?
Watching one of the hosts have sex.
That should be the heading.
Yeah. Body positive, Alicia McCarvell talks having sex with dolphins watching. No, don't worry. We won't pull you under the bus. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and you can listen to us on Women on Top.
But hold up, we need to see where we can follow and find Miss Alicia. Would you like to tell our audience where?
Yes,
sure. You can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Alicia McCarvell, and my husband and I also have a YouTube channel called The McCarvells.
Oh, cute.
Can I go now? Can I say it, Roxy?
Yes.
And you can find us on Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top Podcast on Facebook.
And I am Tammin Starsock.
And I am Roxy Manning.
And we are
Women on